Hi there, my name is Hannah Wessling, and I will be presenting on my proposal for a literature review for my thesis project. I will be focusing on the impact of an inclusive multicultural art curriculum based in secondary schooling and education. My area of focus will be specifically the implementation and impact of a multicultural curriculum for secondary art education. The significance of this study comes from the basis of my student teaching experiences and the lack of multicultural education within the current curriculum in high school settings. The study will add to the body of research on inclusive multicultural art education, but more specifically, the limitations and lack of consideration that this subject has had in its field previous to now. This literature review will be very useful and specifically useful to art educators, administrators, secondary educators, and students that are on the receiving end of this curriculum. My research question as a whole, and the purpose of this study, is what is the impact of an inclusive multicultural art curriculum, including artworks, artists, art processes, on high school students' self-efficacy, overall engagement or ability to connect to the content on a deeper level, and their ability to be cross-culturally competent within a classroom setting with their peers, their educational community. As a literature review, I have three main topics, the first of which being self-efficacy. Students need self-efficacy to choose to engage with academic tasks and to persist when learning becomes more difficult. And having an academic mindset that benefits a positive self-efficacy in the classroom is what we're striving for here. The subcategories under self-efficacy are research that focuses on intrinsic motivation, specifically that increases when students have choice in learning in their content and can connect on a deeper level with the material. Concepts also are necessary of self-efficacy to understand diversity and behaviors within the classroom itself. The second main topic I will be deep diving into is multicultural education. This is really the overarching theme of the paper and proposed thesis. And multicultural education, specifically from the father of this concept, James Banks, is that teachers should be using examples that are weaved into their curriculum from a variety of perspectives, histories, and cultures, and not for including cultures for culture's sake. We're not celebrating just main holidays and main historical figures. We're diving deeper than that to expand students' knowledge and awareness of cultures of their peers and surrounding community. These subcategories of this develop students' awareness and competence of unique, shared, and universal art and culture when specifically looking at the curriculum to be proposed. And educators should be aware and able to educate many cultures that appear in front of them. And as I said, in a socially diverse and culturally diverse classroom, teachers should be prepared to teach to all of those students and recognize the differences and uniqueness within their students. And the third and final main category within my paper is project-based learning. And this stems from hands-on learning where the teacher is removed from the main role and is a facilitator of information. So the modification here of the teacher role moves towards an active facilitator of information and instruction where students are doing the learning themselves, doing the teaching of the curriculum on their own. It's an independent practice. And these subcategories are positive effects on students' engagement, motivation, and beliefs in their own efficacy. They have confidence in their learning, they have confidence in the material that they're absorbing, and the ability to transfer this knowledge onto other parts of their lives. And lastly are the activities undertaken by students that really interest them. When students are able to connect to the material and the content, they're able to develop a more well-rounded understanding on a deeper level rather than surface level that is based on study material. Very important in the art community and art education. The type of study that I'll be completing is a literature review of peer-reviewed interdisciplinary studies in research articles or journals. There are no direct participants since this is not an action research paper. However, the population of students that the proposed curriculum will be geared towards are 9th through 12th grade secondary art students based on demographic information in the San Diego County school districts. The methodological considerations and processes for resources that I will be using are on the right-hand side here, beginning with selection of inclusive and exclusive criteria, what these resources need to have or will be excluded from my research if they have, based on the student population that I'm looking for, art, curriculum, practices, etc. Secondly, I'll be screening and categorizing the research and the studies into categories based on the material listed above, such as multicultural education, project learning, cross-cultural competency, etc. Thirdly, I will be appraising the quality of the articles listed based on their relevance, their purpose, and appropriateness of my study. And finally, I will be synthesizing and reporting on the material found, and then using this material to propose a curriculum that is geared towards an inclusive multicultural curriculum. And lastly here are the ethical considerations and limitations of this study. Ethical considerations are based on what I see in the material that I find with the considerations that we just went over, but specifically the recognition of appropriate, relevant, and purposeful research. In a research literature review, I'm not specifically diving into one-on-one interactions with participants, therefore I have to evaluate the resources that I find. And lastly are the limitations of the study. Like I mentioned previously, there are a lot of gaps in research that are geared towards more multicultural education and literacy and not in artwork. But the scope of the research to date there is very limiting. And then simply just the application that this is all theoretical in the proposed curriculum that I have. That is also a limitation of this study. Thank you for your time and hope you enjoy what is to come.